So unfortunately, I brought along a PowerPoint presentation. I fear that there were less and less human interactions I think I'm capable of doing without a PowerPoint presentation. It's a logistical nightmare on dates, but here we go. In terms of Brexit, in the Institute, we started work on this almost as soon as the referendum was announced by David Cameron. I think it was either December or January 2015-16, which seems quite a long time ago at this stage. And we obviously agreed as an institute that we would do a piece of work on this, and I very much agreed with that. I disagreed violently with the idea that it should be me that carried out the work. And when writing the initial paper that we did, just scoping what the possible implications of Brexit could be for Northern Ireland, as I was going through it, and it was a high level, where not getting into too much of the details, but trying to present an overall impact for Northern Ireland. At various points, I said, God, if I really have to get into the details of this stuff, it's going to be awful. And so convinced was I that the referendum wouldn't be passed. I saw that as possibly a possibility I would never have to engage with. So the morning of June the 24th, 2016 was devastating for a lot of people, but particularly devastating for me, in that I knew that I was going to be talking about Brexit for quite some time to come. And so rather devastatingly, here I am again, very happy to speak. So I'm conscious that a lot of things have come up already, but I just want to take through a few of the sort of things that I've been looking at and how a solution, because I mean we've all passed the stage of, I suppose, of giving out about Brexit, mourning Brexit and denying Brexit, sort of what is it, 7 stages of grief. And now we sort of have to engage with it. I know there was previous speakers here yesterday talking about the fact that Brexit possibly won't happen. I don't subscribe to that opinion. I know sort of from our contacts with similar think tanks in Britain that the political ramifications of Brexit sort of being reversed or becoming mired in bureaucracy and forgotten could possibly be too much for the British political system to bear. So I do think it will happen. And I suppose it is incumbent on anybody who considers themselves a researcher or involved in this to look for solutions. But I also think it's incumbent on those same people to note that there are going to be difficulties and possibly insurmountable difficulties. So, we'll start single market. So, in terms of the 2 main channels of disruption, there are obviously several different facets to the economic integration between EU member states, but the 2 that stand out are the single market and the customs union in terms of delivering the most damage from the Brexit process. So, to start with the single market, and the one that has gotten obviously most of the attention since the Brexit referendum, and I'm actually less concerned. All things are relative. Less concerned about the single market. I think it is more definite that the UK will want to leave the single market, but I think that the possibilities for some sort of fudge are easier in this regard. And there's already been talk, particularly the financial sector in the City of London, looking to match current and future regulations in that sector and looking for equivalence trading rights. It's not the same as being a member of the single market for the main reason that you don't have control over how those regulations are set, and you may have to implement regulations that you believe are of detriment to your industry. But also, equivalence is very much a poor cousin of single market membership. And it was interesting, I can't remember which speaker mentioned about the idea, possibly Colin, of Northern Ireland managing to maintain its access, some of its access to the single market by attempting to maintain certain arrangements and EU arrangements and regulations into the future, which could secure it more access. I think in the current shape of the competencies of the Northern Ireland Assembly, that's unlikely. There are certain areas, the Northern Ireland Assembly, uniquely amongst the other devolved administrations, has complete control over workplace and labour laws. And so any sort of any move in a post-Brexit Britain in order to degrade or make flexible workplace relations or labour laws could be resisted by the Northern Ireland executive if it ever comes back. And so if there were further devolution of competencies to any future Northern Ireland executive, it is possible for them to try and maintain some of that EU infrastructure. And also as well, the point about the single market is that it is obviously, it is not a single market yet. It is a common market with the aim of being a single market, and there is years of work left within the single market. So in terms of the economic impact for Northern Ireland of being removed from the single market now, there is half the pain now and half the pain in the future in terms of the missed opportunities. But the one aspect that I've sort of become sort of bizarrely fascinated with is the customs union, because I think it has the possibility, first of all, I think it has the possibility to do the most damage, and secondly, I think it's the one that's most easily avoided. So in terms of the customs union, just the basics of it, there are two pillars of the customs union: an absence of tariffs between members of the customs union, and an agreement between all members of the customs union to apply a common external tariff to any goods coming in from countries that aren't members of the customs union. That means that goods obviously imported into Ireland from the US can flow easily without further tariffs or disruption amongst the rest of the members of the customs union. In terms of the economic impacts of what a customs union are, customs unions are more common than a single market. There are historical precedents, and it's funny when I've been going through the history of these, and it's striking how the EU stands out as being such a success story in the way it managed the formation of its customs union, because particularly with the examples in South America and Southern Africa, particularly when you have economies within that customs union which are very large and some which are very small. As with all sort of trade integration, there are winners and losers, and it's very hard sometimes to manage a political consensus between large and small economies. In terms of managing how a customs union is brought together. But the EU has been quite successful at that. And in terms of a customs union is, if you were aiming for the best free trade deal, a customs union is what you would end up with. So it seems bizarre for the UK to be saying we want to pull out of the customs union in order to get the best free trade deal possible. You're already in the best free trade deal possible, but anyway. And the point about it is that when you form comprehensive free trade deals, the idea is that it eventually, once you establish them, that they should migrate towards a customs union. And for me, in terms of, I'm talking about Brexit and the border, it's the second pillar of the customs union which is the most concerning. It's the common external tariff. Because when we talk about a free trade deal, and a free trade deal is still only one option, and it's a desirable option for the UK, but obviously subject to negotiations. So a free trade deal between the EU and the UK could eliminate all tariffs between the UK and the EU in terms of goods. That still doesn't get us away from the issue at the border. Because of the common external tariff, the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland will become the EU's trade frontier. As a member of the Customs Union, the Republic of Ireland, as a member of the European Union, it has an obligation to maintain the integrity of the common external tariff. And I mean, the implications of it are obvious, that we can't have goods coming in to Northern Ireland being able to travel freely to the Republic of Ireland that come in from a third country into Northern Ireland under different circumstances than they would come in to the Republic of Ireland. The system that governs how we deal with goods from beyond the EU or beyond our customs union, rules of origin, and this has begun to be talked about in terms of the debate over the border, but it's worth emphasising that rules of origin are not uniform, they're not universal. How one country determines, and sorry, I should say, this is because we're not just talking about goods that come into from a third country and are dispersed amongst the customs union. We live in a modern manufacturing and a globalized manufacturing system where a good produced in Ireland can have many different components from the Far East, from America. Once they all come into Ireland under the same common external tariff, that means that if they are put together with other goods from Ireland into one finished final product, that can sail through the EU market unhindered. In Northern Ireland, that's presently the case as well. If the UK leaves the customs union and Northern Ireland produced goods contain components from beyond, from third countries, and they wish to sell that finished project back into the EU, they are subject to rules of origin. Rules of origin, how we determine, the EU currently says that the good has to be mostly or up to 60% produced and have its final transformation, substantive transformation in the EU country for it to be counted as originating within the EU. But other countries apply different rules of origin, and there's a nightmare scenario if the EU rules of origin and the UK rules of origin diverge, and the technical difficulties that poses for cross-border trading. And sorry, that's a very, very long word at the last sentence there, but there is preferential, contractual, reciprocal rules of origin, which is as close as you can get to having the same rules of origin. You have things like authorised economic operators, which already exist for non-EU trade, which simplify customs procedures for operators. And this makes it easier for people who are engaging in cross-border trade, but it's never going to make it seamless. And when we talk about a frictionless border, I think it's very necessary to have imaginative solutions to how we might manage this, but I think it's irresponsible to have illusionary ones. There is going to be friction at the border for the very reason, if we could create a frictionless border between a member of a customs union and a non-member, why on earth would anybody get involved in creating a customs union in the first place? Customs union, because you have a common external tariff, you have to surrender a certain amount of sovereignty. Ireland doesn't make trade deals. This is why the UK wants to pull out, because it believes it can sail the high seas once again and without reforming the empire, but manage to strike great trade deals in the Far East and all these other places. They want the sovereignty back because, well, I don't know why they want it back, but they want it back. But it requires, membership of a customs union requires you to surrender that sovereignty. And so the idea that we could achieve the same frictionless trade between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, with Northern Ireland as a consequence out of the customs union, is not possible. Just in terms of free movement, I don't dwell on this too much because I think it's been mentioned already. I think that a deal on free movement is more likely and because it could possibly, there is a possibility of bilateral arrangements, and because of the way the EU or the UK currently polices non-EU citizens moving between Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. But I won't say too much about that. Just in terms of possible economic impacts, the agri-food sector has been mentioned, and that takes a hit from the single market and the customs union. When we did the analysis, the initial analysis for Northern Ireland, we actually found that it's manufacturing and it's food manufacturing that takes the biggest hits, but in terms of who actually works there, in terms, when you break it down into the very smallest categories of where people work, the industries most likely to be hit have the highest percentage of female manufacturing workers. So female rural workers in Northern Ireland are likely to see the biggest hit. When I said earlier, talking about the customs union, I said a free trade deal could remove tariffs between the UK and the EU. That's an optimistic scenario. There's a recent ESRI study looking at what would happen if the WTO tariffs existed between the UK and Northern Ireland. And I wouldn't read it before you go to bed. It's nightmarish stuff. And you'd hope that saner heads can avoid that scenario. In terms of the single market, as I was saying, the greatest disruption in the future is obviously the disruption now from leaving the single market, but that if regulations and standards diverge in the future between the UK and the EU, there's possibility for even deeper impacts. In terms of the customs union, and there's a point to be made here, because there was suggestions a couple of months ago that Northern Ireland should remain in the EU customs union because of its trade with the Republic of Ireland. Unfortunately, given, yes, the Republic of Ireland is the Northern Ireland's largest external trading partner, but by some measure the level of trade between Northern Ireland and mainland Britain is several multiples of what is traded with the Republic of Ireland. So yes, you would be removing friction from the border with the Republic, but you would be placing a certain friction between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, and in terms of the volume of trade there. Whilst it is easier to manage these things on sea and airports than it is on a land border, the volume of trade involved, it's like being asked which knee do you want to be shot in. Like there is too much of a danger either way. We really should be focused, and I think in terms of Ireland's role here, on trying to keep the UK within the whole of the UK within the customs union. The numbers are there. There is no way they would be able to replace the level of trade they have with the EU with these new trade deals that they are planning. But there's also a political danger here, and I've heard that because after the UK general election, people posited that now that the DUP were able to influence the Tory government, that somehow made a soft Brexit more likely. The DUP are hard Brexit. They want to come out of both the single market and the customs union, but they also say they don't want a border. And the way I've seen this being framed is they're saying, we want to come out of the single market and the customs union, and if the EU wishes to impose a border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, it will be the EU that has done it. That is, certain things are subject to differences of opinion. That is false. The decision to leave the customs union by the UK will make the border on the between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, and it is very important that blame is apportioned appropriately in that situation. The last thing I'd say is the only comfort I take from the UK general election is that the possibility of no deal seems to be drifting off the table, because I don't want to write a research paper scoping the possibilities of that, so everyone do what you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. We hear your plea. But you've certainly outlined the complexities, not just the challenges, and I shudder when I hear rules of origin and cascading and substantive transformation and WTO panels, you know, it really does make